Dark Phoenix is a movie that no one will care about in now.
What's up, Story Geeks? It's Jay Shear. On today's podcast, Scott Niswander from NerdSync and Captain Midnight joined Daryl Smith and me to rank every X-Men movie. This is episode 4 in our X-Men series. Check out last week's episode on Days of Future Past. And coming up next week, we're going to dig deeper into Dark Phoenix. Don't miss out on future episodes or any upcoming series. Subscribe for free in your preferred podcast provider. For articles written by Ashley Pauls and Anthony Holder, and to access all of our premium content, including our aftercasts, visit thestorygeeks.com. On today's aftercast, you actually get to hear the full 2-hour unedited conversation where Scott, Captain Midnight, Daryl, and myself rank every X-Men movie. There's a lot more conversation that happens than you're going to hear on this main show, but for the aftercast, you get to hear the full thing unedited. Thanks for listening in. The Story Geeks podcast is produced by the Reclamation Society. Let's rank every single one of the X-Men movies. Welcome to the show, guys. We are going to rank the X-Men films, and we're going to do it a little bit differently than we've done it in the past. We're not going to start with our number 10, or in this case, there's 12 films. We're not going to do it in that order. We're going to do it in release order, and we're all going to give the number that we put where that ranks for us based on release order of the films. Before I do that, though, why don't you guys tell people about your channels?
I am Captain Midnight, and on my channel, I mostly talk about movies. I cover some TV as well. But yeah, I just really dig into a lot of superheroes and kind of connect their modern films to their origins. Nice. And, read into where their origins kind of play out even in these really high-tech newer films.
Perfect. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on NerdSync, NerdSync is a YouTube channel where I make video essays about where I take comics and superheroes and use them to teach about real-world history, science, philosophy, culture, and art. I'm in the middle of a big event called VidCon right now, and I've had to memorize my sales pitch exactly word for word. So hopefully I nailed that.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was perfect. Mm-hmm. We're going to go around the table. Captain Midnight, I will start with you, then we'll go to Scott, then we'll go to Daryl every single time around, and I'll do mine last. The first film on here is going to be the first X-Men film really of all time, right? This is the first X-Men film ever to come out in theaters.
Yeah.
Feature release. X-Men. So what do you think, Captain Midnight?
All right, so I have X-Men at number 5.
Okay.
Interesting.
I think it is a very small-scale movie. I think it is a lot more, in a weird way, intimate than future movies because they just didn't have the budget to really go all out with the superhero action that we would get later on.
Sure.
And that trips up the movie in a few ways. Like the final fight in the Statue of Liberty just does not age well at all. But I do think that allowed them to spend more time letting the characters breathe, and future movies suffer from not having that. And I think they set up Magneto and Professor X's philosophical difference really well, even if they don't set up the rest of the team very well. But all of these movies kind of have that problem, and at least this does a few things really well. So, yeah, it's it's middle of the road for me, but it's a solid start, I think.
Okay. So Daryl's actually, what he's doing is he's tracking all of our numbers because we're gonna have a definitive ranking when you compile all of our choices together.
And I think
as to what the order will be.
I think the 4 of us in this room are the only authorities necessary
Who else
to
do you need
rank
to listen to?
Yeah,
official
exactly.
X-Men movies.
Yeah, name one other person.
Anyone else who's thinking about ranking these movies, don't do it.
Yeah.
You can't.
We're doing it
We've
for
already
you.
Just
set
listen to
with
the
it.
podcast. So speaking of which, where would you put X-Men? Scott?
Very similar spot. I actually put it at number 4 for me, so a little bit higher.
Okay.
But the reason it was higher for me is just because I remember this was the first movie that really got me into superheroes in comics. I saw it with my dad, who's a big old nerd. And it was the first movie that it was just him and I, because you have a big family, you all see a movie together, sort of thing. This was a very intimate father-son, let's go to the movies, let's watch this nerdy thing.
That's cool.
And I treasure that so dearly. And I thought it was so interesting and so cool, and this new world of superheroes kind of opened up to me, and I will always rank it. I always think of it fondly. Let's say,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
for sure.
Daryl, what do you think?
I'm probably going to anger some people.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to anger people throughout this entire podcast.
Okay, cool. I won't be the only
You
one.
and I will be the two people
How
angering
many things
people.
can you reach to throw at me? Not that
Yeah.
many. Okay, that's good.
I've got coffee. That's all I got.
Good. That's damaging. I have it at number 8.
Okay.
Number 8 of
Not
12.
a fan, huh?
No. Not that I'm not a fan.
Okay.
There is exactly one movie on this list that I'm not a fan of.
Oh,
I know
we'll get to
And
that.
there's a
We'll
lot
get to
more
that.
movies than one.
Yeah,
of this
I
list
had
that I'm not
a really
fan of.
I had a really hard time ranking my final 5 because I'm like they're all bad.
So this is going to be a theme, so I may as well bring it up now. And I've talked about this before in previous episodes of our X-Men series. I absolutely despise the way that they treated Cyclops in the
Yeah.
X-Men films.
Terrible, yeah.
Until
agree.
Ty Sheridan. I like that a little bit more, but what they did with James Marsden is egregious. It is
Yeah.
awful. And this film, there's 3 films that feature that, and to me, this is the second best of those 3, but all 3 of them are going to suffer because of that.
Yeah.
And I really, really like the newer cast and the younger cast and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
really enjoy those dynamics. So I know this is the pioneer, and I totally respect it for that.
Yeah.
And there was some amazing stuff in this film, and I do really, really, really like the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have it at number 8.
I totally get that though. Yeah, I mean, you got to treat people named Scott a lot better, in my opinion.
You do.
That's right.
You do.
And what's really sad about that whole thing is that, like, I think he's good casting for Cyclops. They
Yeah,
just
it's just-
never
it's
gave
so
him a
poorly written.
chance to-
Yeah.
yeah.
I've said before, like, they basically neutered him.
He never felt like the leader of the X-Men the way that he is in a lot of the comics. Like
Yeah,
it's always
see?
yeah.
He
I
felt
know.
like the
He points at me because the reason why he's saying that is because I primarily know the X-Men through the TV show.
Right.
okay.
I am a comics fan, but I am not as well read as anybody else in this room.
Yeah.
And so for me, I would always say like, yeah, I mean, Cyclops is a leader, but like not the way that I understand it from people who have read the comics. Who's like,
Gotcha.
no, he's a full-on leader. I'm like, oh, okay, like, I guess. So
Yeah.
that's where that's coming from.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
in these movies especially, but also in the TV show, he often feels like more of a foil for other
Yeah,
characters to play
yeah.
off of, you know?
That totally makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you combine, besides Daryl's complaints about Scott, which I would agree with, but I'm not as passionate about them. If you take Daryl's comments and Captain Midnight's comments, that's basically exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
So I don't need to reiterate them. Have it at number 6. And the
okay.
only thing I would add is kind of like the fact that this is the first one. And not only the first one, but the fact that they put this cast together. Right? Like you had
Yeah.
you have Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart being like, I'm all in on a comic book movie.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's pretty ludicrous.
That's S tier casting right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that just made it legitimized it immediately, right? Which is really cool. All right, Captain Midnight, we got to move on to X-Men United. Where do you have that one?
X-Men United, I have at number 2.
It is beloved. People love
a
number
good one.
2.
Yeah. So I really, really like this movie. I think this is the closest that, except maybe for another movie that we'll talk about later, that got to kind of the team dynamics that I always wanted from these movies. Also, a huge reason why it's so high is it has my good pal, Nightcrawler, front and center, just, doing his thing. In future movies, even when they had Nightcrawler, he was so wasted. I really, really liked him here. The Wolverine stuff is, I think, just so much better here than it would be in most later movies. It felt like there was actually a reason to focus on him as opposed to just shoving him to the forefront because he's the star.
That's a great
Definitely.
point.
And, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart feel like they both show up here, whereas I feel like in the movie after this, they're kind of kicking back with their checks a little bit. But yeah, this just like all around, I think this is probably the best X-Men movie that exists. I'll get into that later. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
this is the best that they've ever done
Nice.
with the kind of weird version of this franchise that exists.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
absolutely. I have a lot of the same thoughts. I will say I ranked this at number 3.
Oh.
So a little bit lower.
Yeah.
But still quality movie. The way that I'd ranked these was mostly just how much do I want to see it right now? And I haven't seen this movie in a while.
Yeah.
And I just remember loving so much of it, focusing on some of the characters that didn't get too much time to shine, like in the first movie, like Iceman, or having Pyro be there as well. I thought there was, it might be, I haven't seen, like I said, I haven't seen it in a while, but
Yeah.
I remember there was that scene with Iceman and his family that was very much like an allegory for coming out.
Yeah,
and it's like,
yeah,
have
yeah.
you tried not being a mutant? Sort of thing. And so I thought that was handled pretty good.
Yeah.
At least, I have not seen it. So if I'm wrong, then I change my mind. I think it was handled poorly. But I just remember it being like really like, oh, that's interesting. They're actually using the X-Men as they're intended, like as an
Yeah.
allegory for people who feel like they don't fit in, for people who feel like they're being persecuted against, sort of. And
Yeah,
so I feel like they handled it really well in this movie, and I'm a big fan. I thought
Yeah.
it was great.
Definitely.
It's a great movie. It's definitely the best of the original cast for me. Here's where I make people mad. I have it at number 6.
Whoa.
You're not going to make people as mad as I'm going to make them.
Number 12. Terrible movie.
And it's not because there's anything wrong with this movie. It's just because I feel very passionately about several of these other films. But Captain Midnight, I agree with you. Nightcrawler was fantastic. Alan Cumming as Nightcrawler was a beautiful choice.
Like his chemistry with Storm in that movie too
Yeah.
was just so good.
And the way he behaved too, like just sort of his shy, sort of almost like he'd been abused and mistreated and beaten down, and he definitely had something to overcome in and of himself, which drove the X-Men story home even stronger. Something I had to remind myself of. I am, as these movies go through, I get absolutely sick to death of Stryker. I'm like, why does Stryker have to be in so many of these damn movies? But I have to remember, this was the first movie that Stryker was in. Brian Cox played him in this. It was brilliant. He did really, really well. And the whole scene at like Alkaline Lake at the end is fantastic. And the cool tease to the Phoenix at the end, which didn't pay off as well as we at the time hoped it would. But
So many versions of Stryker, and none of them tapping into like the really insane like religious angle of the character.
Yeah,
It's like,
for
come
sure.
on, like
none of them
why-
are zealots. They're just like sort of
If-
stubborn scientist,
If we're
military
gonna do
dudes.
Stryker that many times, just do it right one time.
Yeah. By the numbers,
right.
you should have it eventually.
You should have lucked into it. Yeah. So you had it at number 6?
Number 6.
Okay. Well, I'm going to really upset people.
Uh-oh.
So here's the thing. I actually agree with everything that has been said thus far. As I was watching it last night, I was like, this feels a lot more like an X-Men film than a lot of the later films that came behind it.
Yeah.
And Captain Midnight, you kind of capitalized on that. I'm like, it's the best team-based deal. Like, I agree with 100% of that. What has happened for me is that every time I go back to watch an early 2000s film, I instantly am disappointed in it. And it's because of what we've gotten since. And I can't wrap my head around that. Like, I did like the previous X-Men film a little bit better than this one, but more because you said it, Captain Midnight, everybody, the characters are able to breathe. So we were able to kind of get into them and like understand them a little bit more. This is a team-based movie that I feel like if it were done today would have been like 2 movies. There's a lot that's crammed in.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's going on. So for me, I look at this and I go, it feels like a lot like an early 2000s. So I don't know what year it came out. Maybe was it 2006? Maybe something
No,
like
I don't think it was that long.
Yeah, it was
It was
like
earlier.
2003,
Okay,
4.
there you go.
Yeah.
So more to my point, like
Yeah.
the earlier in the 2000s you get, the more I find it difficult to watch them because I feel like it's been done better with the MCU, especially
2003, by the way.
2003. So
Nailed
right
it.
on. Yeah. So for me, it's not that I hate this film. I enjoyed it. I totally enjoyed it, but it's not. I like other elements of other films especially some that because you're listening, you're gonna be like, how in the world did you like that better than this? But it's just that I did, for what was thrown in. So yeah. All right, so let's move on to.
Wait, did you say your ranking? Did I miss it?
Yeah, it's 10.
Oh, you have it at 10.
I have it at 10.
Holy cow.
That's why people will be upset. That's why people will be very upset, especially when I say it's where some of my other movies are.
I came into this thinking mine were going to be controversial, but you guys are showing me up here.
We are way more controversial.
That's good, though. That means we're going to have a balanced
I like
a balanced
that.
overall answer.
Every movie's going to come up with the same score at the end. And it's just like the X-Men movies. They're good.
Yeah, so that was my ranking. Now let's move on to The Last Stand. Captain Midnight, where do you put The Last Stand?
I have The Last Stand at 10.
Okay.
Yeah,
Real low.
it is. It's not a good one. It's a a Brett Ratner movie, and his usual work ethic really shines through here.
Yes.
Like we talked about how these movies don't have much time for Cyclops, but this movie seems to actively hate Cyclops. It like kills him off screen.
Yes.
Just does not care. I don't know. I kind of, the one aspect of this movie that I do kind of like is, one, I like how campy Magneto gets to be. Because you might as well be goofy with it if your movie's going to be this bad.
Yeah.
And then two, I do like the attempt at the mutant cure storyline. I think that's an interesting concept that I think they mostly waste. But I mostly just think sitting through this movie is really tough and
punishment.
And like a lot of like the meme humor, like the I'm the Juggernaut bitch moment has just aged so poorly.
Yeah.
But terrible. And in the comics, Juggernaut is Professor X's brother. Am I
Yes.
right about that? Or at least half brother?
Yeah, it's like a half brother. Yeah. Or step-brother.
Clearly they didn't bother to address that.
It was like a fake muscle suit too, right?
I
Like
hope
it wasn't,
so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it did-
no, it
I
was.
mean, the suit didn't look good.
Yeah.
Ellen Page wasted as Kitty Pryde.
Wasted.
That's-
throughout this whole franchise.
Yes.
And I really
Oh.
like Ellen Page. I think she was good casting. But yeah.
Is it like an actual crime to like waste an actor's abilities in a movie with like? Can we arrest somebody, please?
We need to make a new law that you can.
Yeah.
Scott, where do you have it?
I have it at number 8.
Oh.
So here's the thing about me in my ranking system: the worst sin a movie can do
Yeah.
is be forgettable. This movie, at least, was memorable. So I have several more under it that I feel like I don't know anything about them anymore.
Oh.
But this movie, I watched it several times. It was I watched the first 2 X-Men movies in theaters. This was the first one that I had not watched in theaters. I waited till it came out on home release, and such a disappointment.
Yeah.
I felt like, obviously, focusing on 2 giant stories of the Cure and Dark Phoenix was just pick one, pick a lane, do it right. Don't try to do both of them. And I really wish that they had used Kitty Pryde better. I love Kitty Pryde. She's probably my favorite X-Man.
Same,
and,
actually, yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think she's fantastic. And what a disappointment. And I don't know, I feel like even the death of Professor X felt like, okay, I wish it was a little bit more meaningful. I wish it was better, and I don't know. There was just so much that they just dropped the ball on this one, for sure.
Yeah. Daryl?
Yeah,
Does
the
it
death
improve?
of Professor X was a bummer. I have it at 10. I'm right there with
Okay.
Captain Midnight.
Okay.
The thing about the death of Professor X was it was so poorly done that Days of Future Past comes around and retcons it for absolutely no reason with no explanation whatsoever. But I still blame Last Stand. I'm like, Days of Future Past is fine. Last Stand is at fault there. It's not a good film. I will say I still enjoy it as a superhero movie. I can enjoy most superhero movies just as superhero movies.
Well, there's only one movie on here that I think is worse than this movie.
Oh.
So you have it at 11?
I have it at 11. And primarily because, so you kind of said it, Scott, like, it's not forgettable, and that's true.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. But it's a movie I don't want to watch. I've started watching it and been like, nope, I'm not going to finish this. Like, why do this to myself? Like, I don't care. So, 11. X-Men Origins
Oh,
Wolverine.
that's right. Oh,
All right.
Controversial.
I forgot. I forgot.
Captain
Oh.
Midnight, what's your ranking on this one?
So I have this at number 11.
Mm.
Not the worst, but almost there.
Almost the
Almost
worst.
there.
But whenever I try to think about the reasons why I really don't like it, it's like in my head I know it's really bad, but in my heart I actually kind of love this movie because it's the only one that's like so bad that it really becomes memorable to me. The blob stuff is like baffling. To think that the franchise, like the Wolverine sub franchise of the X-Men franchise, is so crazy because it goes from the blob boxing the blob to Logan, and that's just crazy.
Do that.
I love how ambitious this movie is at like, it starts in the Civil War and it starts when they're little kids and
The
it goes
opening
through all
credits.
the wars through the ages. And it fails so badly at everything it tries to do, but it tries to do so much. And I respect that. I respect this movie more than The Last Stand, even if I think it's failing harder than The Last Stand was.
Yep. I have this at number 9.
Hey.
Because once again, it's at least memorable. I think there's so much about this movie that's memorable. From the horrible treatment of Deadpool. I actually really liked Liev Schreiber as
He was awesome.
Yeah.
So much better than the
So good.
other guy. I don't remember his name.
And yeah, I thought it had a lot of
he's a
memorable
wrestler.
moments. I think they had an issue with trying to explain the origins of a character who's like really interesting because you don't know where he came from.
Yeah.
But
Take
I don't know.
note, Joker movie. Like,
I know.
yeah, I don't know. And then like the weird use of Emma Frost was like again like I felt like a wasted part of that. Even like
did they
using
ever actually name her Emma? Did they call that out?
I think so. They did.
Really?
I think.
And she looked more like an ice character than a diamond character.
I don't know. And then even just weirdly using Cyclops, which is like a thing that I always forget that movie did too. It's like why? I don't know. There was so much going on. It was so bonkers.
Yeah.
And then Gambit, right, was also like there's so much of it's in this movie that they were trying to juggle for no reason.
Yeah.
But it sticks out of my mind because I just think it's so funny.
Fair. Daryl.
I have it at number 5.
Whoa.
I love you, and I want to know all of your thoughts.
So, I think it's just crazy fun.
Yeah.
I have a few caveats to this. First of all, and this will come up later, I have no love for Deadpool. So I don't care that they butchered Deadpool's character in this movie. Doesn't bother me at all. I really enjoy the final battle sequence.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the chip on my shoulder about Deadpool. I loved Gambit in this film. And my argument would be better if I could actually remember the name of the guy that played him.
Taylor Kitsch.
Taylor Kitsch, thank you. I knew it was Taylor something.
This was during, because he's so good in Friday Night Lights, that show, and this was during that like 3 years where the industry was like, okay, this guy's going to be a star, right?
Yeah.
And then John Carter came out and everyone was like,
And John
no.
Carter was terrible, but he's done some great stuff since then. He's been in Lone Survivor
He was
and
in,
American Assassin. I like him a lot, and I thought he was great as Gambit. So I really enjoy this movie. I thought it was super fun. Obviously, it has tons of problems, and
It's
not a
real
well-told
wacky.
story, and it's super wacky. And it was the beginning of the screwed-up timeline that these films suffer from.
Yeah, because weren't they planning on doing multiple X-Men Origins?
Yes.
They were going to do a
Yeah.
Magneto.
That's why they
Yeah.
titled it like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I have it at number 9. But I actually think it's crazy. And what you guys haven't mentioned is how bad some of the CG is. I mean, the helicopter is awful, and
it's so bad.
It's the only.
Oh
scene
yeah, and
I
the guy
can-
jumping onto the helicopter.
terrible.
Ghost was his name. The
I don't-
Asian assassin guy.
I don't
The Asian
remember.
assassin was called like Agent X or something like that.
Something like that.
And then because there was Wraith was the teleporting guy.
Oh
yeah,
right,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was
Yeah.
Will I Am, which
That's
we haven't
right.
even talked about.
Oh
Yet.
my god.
Well, and this is the one scene where I just distinctly remember he's in the bathroom and his claws are literally moving on his hand. Like they're not, and I'm like, that's so objectively horrible that I can watch the film. I have no background in CG whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's easy to fool me, and I can just sit there and be like, well, that was wrong.
Yeah.
And so, but I will say that I remember thinking, despite all of its flaws, and there are many, I am a big fan of Wolverine, and it's at least fun. It was at least fun for me.
Yeah.
So I have it at number 9.
Did you guys ever see the better version of this movie?
No.
The better version?
So the version that was leaked without finished effects.
No.
It was so amazing. I had it on a flash drive in high school, and like the ending where the debris was like falling on Logan's head. It was Hugh Jackman rolling around, like trying to get away from these like little purple pebbles that had notes next to them of like include blah blah blah.
Oh, that's really funny.
And he was just screaming and freaking out as they're falling around.
What a
I'm gonna go
classically
looking for
trained
that
actor.
later.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's awesome.
Oh, that's spectacular.
All right, well, back to you, Captain Midnight. Now we are going to tackle First Class, X-Men First Class. Where do you have that?
I have that at number 4.
Number 4. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I like X-Men First Class a lot. I feel like this is one that's almost like... maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some of you guys really hate this one. But I feel like this one's pretty universally liked, maybe. Yeah, I think they did a great job. Like, this is my favorite version of Magneto, who's like maybe...
Yes.
He's maybe my favorite character in the X-Men universe, maybe. I don't know. There's some
He's
competition.
Jay's favorite Marvel villain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That includes the MCU.
That includes the MCU. Yep.
But yeah, I like that scene in, what was it, Argentina?
Yeah.
I mean,
amazing.
That's probably the best for me that Magneto's ever been like, in this franchise. I like McAvoy's more like more like insecure take on Professor X and how he's not quite sure, like what he is yet. He's not like super polished and fatherly or anything yet. And Jennifer Lawrence is actually like really trying here. The teen stuff, it's like it feels so wasted now knowing what came after that, but they set it up so well.
Yeah.
So I want to give the movie points for that, but at the same time it's like then it just kind of
they killed half that cast off screen.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But that just as by itself is, it's just such a good ride.
Yeah.
Well, gang, it was bound to happen sooner or later. I have First Class at number 1.
Hey,
Oh, number 1.
bound to happen again, let me tell you.
Yeah. I think this is the best X-Men movie for sure. I think the costumes are just the best costumes in all of the movies. All the classic blue and yellow, the way that everyone looks uniform in the color choices, but also each of their costumes reflects their powers distinctly.
Yeah,
I think that is brilliant, and I love that. I think just the discussion of the ideology between Professor X and Magneto, there's that scene where they're playing chess for like the first time. It's their iconic thing that they do. And there's that whole exchange about like, killing will not bring us peace. Peace was never an option. And that's like the core of these two characters. And that's exactly what it is. And just incredible casting on especially Michael Fassbender as Magneto. He's like terrifying, but you get where he's coming from because of his whole traumatic childhood. And Professor X he's like this very kind of suave. This is like the most likable Professor X that James McAvoy has done. Every movie after this where he's Professor X, he just gets less and less likable, in my opinion. And I don't know, that's probably intentional, but like you start being like, I don't know if I like this guy anymore.
I kind of like that about these movies.
Sure. I like that he kind of starts as like that, kind of cool dude.
I agree with you for sure on that. Like Fassbender's Magneto is just I want the Origins Magneto movie starring him. Like I would take that now.
Still, for sure. But I just love this movie so much, and I love that it feels there are these like the montage sequence where everyone's learning their powers. It's like edited in a really fun like comic book way with all the different panel editings and everything. It feels like a comic book movie that has incredibly high stakes and is like very culturally of that time period where it's set. But it still feels very fun and charming to me.
Yeah.
I have it at number 1 too. I'm right there with you.
Buddies.
High five to the
High
high five in
five.
studio.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite superhero movies. I mean, and I remember not having a whole lot of great thoughts about it and anticipating it.
Yeah.
Because back then it just felt like, well, Last Stand sucked. I really liked X-Men Origins Wolverine, but now they're doing this whole thing where they're introducing all these other younger versions, and he's not even there. Yes, he did turn out to be there, but briefly.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know if I want this. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. I'm like, this is brilliant. And I think setting it against the Cold War works so well for the human mutant thing, because there's already this paranoia throughout the whole world, you know?
Yeah.
And, Fassbender, I'll sing his praises too. I love McAvoy as Professor X. I think he shines a little bit more in later films, more than this one even. But it's a brilliant movie.
Yeah. I have it at number 2. So you're not going to find any argument here. In this X-Men series we've been doing, I have rewatched a lot of them. And one movie on rewatch has stood out a little bit more. This used to be my number 1. I used to be right there with you guys. I think that I like the aesthetic approach to the 60s a lot.
Yeah.
But I do think that... and by the way, the third act of this film is magnificent.
Yes.
It's a great
Which
third
is
act.
usually a sticking point for a lot of comic book films.
Which is usually a big problem for comic book films. Kevin Bacon's performance.
I was going to mention him.
Awesome.
It's so good.
He's so good.
He's seriously terrifying.
Absolutely.
Oh
He's
my God.
great.
And then when Magneto pushes the coin slowly through his skull, that is like horrifying. Oh,
It's a fantastic film. There's no question.
It was also a lower budgeted movie than even the previous two, because at this point Fox was losing faith in the franchise, and they apparently didn't get along with Matthew Vaughn, who never came back and directed another one of these. And it's really too bad, because he
killed it.
Yeah, and he brings a level of like joy to these movies that Bryan Singer doesn't do joy really.
So. I'm not a big fan of joy.
And he at the same time he brings an edge to it that Bryan Singer doesn't have either.
Yeah.
So
That's good. All right, next up, The Wolverine.
The
Wolverine.
All right, I put this at number 7.
Okay.
I think it is perfectly solid, middle of the road. I like the some of the like use of the Japanese setting is really cool. I really like that one scene where Wolverine gets shot like 6 million times with like spears in the back, and when he's like dragging along in the snow.
It's got that hardcore Ronin vibe.
Yeah. And I think it does like the tortured about Jean Grey stuff.
By the way, to be clear,
well.
that's neither Ronan the Accuser or Ronan, Hawkeye's other character.
Daryl just
whole
throws
different
out,
thing.
Daryl just throws out Ronan all willy-nilly, and I have no idea what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah, Ronan. I know Ronan.
What about 47 Ronin?
Yeah, see? There's a bunch of them.
That too, yeah.
But yeah, the tortured Jean Grey stuff, I think, works really well here, to the point where like it makes you actually care about their relationship more than you ever did in The Last Stand. What I don't like is the third act just is where the old man is fighting in the giant samurai robot or whatever that was. By that point I was kind of checked out. Overall, I think this one's just kind of like, sure, if it's on TNT in the afternoon, why not watch it?
True.
I put this at number 10.
Oh.
Only because, again, following my rule of it's just so forgettable to me.
Yeah.
Like, I remember liking it. I remember being like, well, that was kind of neat, like walking out of the theater. I couldn't tell you anything. You were just describing that spear thing in his back. I don't have any memory of that whatsoever. There are bits and pieces that I remember. I do remember him being tortured about Jean Grey. I thought that was actually really interesting. I remember there was like a bullet train sequence or something. Was he fighting on a train?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
See that? I forgot.
Yeah, see, but there are just so many bits and pieces that so much of it I forgot that I just can't even talk anymore about this movie because those are all of my thoughts. It's number 10.
I have it at number 7. And to me, I think it's the most forgettable of the franchise too. But the reason I put it up higher is it has one of my favorite opening scenes in an X-Men film. The scene at Hiroshima.
Yes.
That is
freaking
good.
cool.
That is
And I
cool
remember
scene.
watching that scene, and I'm like, this movie's going to be amazing. And then it gets to like Wolverine being in the jungle with the bear and like getting mad that those guys killed the bear and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, this is still really cool. And then the Japanese girl shows up, which I knew was coming. I knew he was going to go to Japan. I knew this was the kind of the Ronin story and that was going to happen. But from that point on, I'm like, oh, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, the momentum's gone. I do have to throw a whole lot of credit at Hugh Jackman for the way he looked in this movie. Doesn't even look human.
Dude.
It's ridiculous.
Shredded.
Yeah.
for
But
sure.
Part of the
number
reason
7.
he like stopped doing this has to be so he didn't have to look.
I
like that
know,
all the
right?
time,
Oh,
right? Like,
totally.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, totally. I have it at number 5. I really like this movie. I think it is forgettable. That is a major problem for it. And I think, and I wish that they could have done this film after having done Logan. Because if you gave sort of like the Logan treatment to this story, I think it would have been really, really cool.
Yeah.
But I don't think we get Logan without this film.
Oh, I totally agree.
This was a leap
is
that they
the-
let James Mangold take that
Absolutely.
proved that they could get
Yeah.
to Logan.
Absolutely.
which, like, by the way, I think this movie, like, from a cinematography standpoint, looks so much better than most
It's
of these.
beautiful.
It's
Yes.
a good-looking movie.
Absolutely.
I kind of want to revisit this movie now. Like, I
Yeah.
haven't seen it since it first came out. I feel like maybe it's worth another
Yeah,
watch.
I would love to watch it again too. I think I remember enjoying it, but I remember afterwards thinking, "Oh, I can see where they're trying to go with this. They're trying to go a little darker. They're trying to push boundaries a little bit, but it's not enough." You know what I mean? Like there's that
Right.
that kind of in between area, and I think a lot of it has to do with, like you mentioned, Captain Midnight, that final fight. Because it kind of goes right back into comic book territory. I'm using air quotes.
Yeah.
It goes back into comic book movie territory where it almost was playing with some deeper stuff that they could have gone into, but they just kind of abandoned it for the standard issue.
Right.
Yeah, it really feels like a studio note at the end there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you know what? Days of Future Past doesn't have to shoulder any blame for the retconning of Professor X. He appears in the end of this one.
He does.
This movie shoulders the blame
right.
for that.
And if I remember right, Logan's like, "How are you alive?" And he's like, "No, no. We don't have time for that."
discuss later.
All right, so now we are at X-Men Days of Future Past. Captain Midnight, where did you put this one?
I put this one at number 3.
Number 3.
Ooh.
Nice.
Yeah, I really, really like this movie. I think this is probably like the most. I don't know. Well, X2, I guess, is a little bit higher, but I just love the cast coming together. I think that's really fun. And I think because these movies did so few of the core characters well, honestly, when you take good versions of Professor X, you know, instead of having one good version, you have two.
Yeah.
So it matters less that all of the characters that they screwed up are still screwed up. I think Peter Dinklage is a lot of fun here.
Yeah.
I love the stadium set piece. Like, that's just really memorable to me. I love Magneto's... They go back to the well of Magneto turning evil like over and over again in these later X-Men movies. This is the only one after First Class where it feels justified to me. And I'll get into that later. But yeah, I just really enjoyed this movie. The first Quicksilver scene
Yeah.
is super memorable
Yeah,
and fun. And
Absolutely.
they try to repeat that over and over again, and I don't think it was... just the first time they did it, the concept was there, you got it. I didn't need to see them try to repeat themselves.
Yeah.
And the one little
yeah.
nod to Magneto maybe being his dad in that.
Yeah.
They should have just left it at that. When
I
he's
like
like,
that.
Yeah.
You can control metal? Oh, my mom knew a guy that could do that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
should have just left it at that.
Yeah. Would have been good. For me, I put Days of Future Past at number 6.
Oh, okay.
Only because I like some of the other movies a little bit better, but I do like this movie a lot. I think it has a very emotional arc at the end with Mystique and trying to decide whether or not to actually fire the gun. I like that they got the old cast and the new cast together. I thought that was very fun. And I wish they had used Kitty Pryde the way that they do in the comics, where she's the one being sent back, but the previous movies set up Wolverine obviously way better. So it made a lot more sense for him to go back there. And it was really fun. I like the emotional scene of Professor X kind of talking to himself with the two different actors, and I thought that was very good too. I think James McAvoy his acting in this movie was spectacular. Like the way that he seemed like he was almost like a drug addict for like wanting to walk and not having to, he's like, I don't need my powers as long as I don't have to be in a chair, sort of a thing. And I don't know. There are lots of memorable moments, but I like some movies a little bit better.
Fair enough. Daryl Smith.
I have it at number 2.
Ooh.
Number 2. I love this movie. This movie to me is my favorite comic booky X-Men film. This one feels the most like a comic book to me when I watch it. I love their representation of the future. One flaw is I wish we got to see more of it. It's very localized. Like, it's very clear that it's like, I mean, I know most of these movies are shot in studios and stuff, and they build from there, but that one feels like it was shot in a studio, and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, James McAvoy, so good in this. Nicholas Hoult, so good in this. It was really fun to see Wolverine play off of the younger version of all the characters. It's kind of like, you guys were so screwed up. And I loved seeing the old cast come back and be treated, this might be a bold statement, but in my opinion, be treated better than they were in any of the previous films.
Wow, even X2.
Even X2, yeah. Even though they were on screen for such a little bit of time. Like, I mean, you need those other films to get here, obviously. Like, you can't appreciate Magneto in this film, the Ian McKellen Magneto, unless you know what a bastard he was in the other films. You know?
They kind of dropped the frat boy Cyclops angle.
Yeah.
So that was good, too.
Yeah. So, yeah, I love this movie. Super fun.
I don't disagree. This is my number 1 movie.
Hey.
This is my number 1 X-Men movie. And I have it there. So, First Class used to be my number 1. Days of Future Past turned into my number 1 after my 2 recent rewatches, which is literally over the last 2 weeks as we did this series. And primarily it was all related to the second act of First Class versus the second act of this film. And I felt like the second act of this film was just a stronger second act. First, I would probably give First Class a nod to having a slightly better third act. But this film was just really compelling to me. Everybody plays this film in a way that I think dedicates their portrayal to the character they want to put on screen, meaning that nobody's kind of half-assing it here. They're all in. They're all doing it well. It's almost as if they all got in a room beforehand and were like, Fassbender turns to McClellan and go like, I'm going to be the better Magneto, right? and they're like,
it's on.
Yeah, it's on, man. Like this is going down. So I just on rewatch, I just really liked it. I think that the X-Men are the strongest. And I said this on multiple podcasts so far, when you have Charles Xavier's worldview versus Magneto's worldview. And Magneto has, the reason why he's my favorite villain is because he has every reason to think and behave the way that he does. His tribe was abused by another tribe, and he goes, now I'm protecting my tribe at all costs. That is a super compelling worldview to throw into any movie, especially when the counterpoint is, no, all the tribes should get along. We should get past that. We should move beyond that. And those two clashing is amazing, and I think it happens really well here. Also happened really well in First Class.
Yes.
But on rewatch, I don't like the 70s as much of a backdrop as I like the 60s.
I agree.
But I like this one a little bit better, so it ends up being number 1.
Yeah.
By the way, primarily as a TV cartoon fan, having the Sentinels show up.
Yes.
Oh, just like, this is awesome.
Overdue for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a bit in the Danger Room and Last Stand, but
Right.
like seeing them actually physically
But that was
there.
like a Cyclops treatment. Like,
Yeah.
They made them, they
they're
neutered
like,
them. They made them
see, we
unmenacing.
did it.
Yeah.
And that was one aspect where the 70s setting really helped, because I loved how like 70s looking the Sentinels
Yes.
was.
Yeah. Totally.
That was dope. Cool. Now we are into our last 5 films. So we've been through 7, heading into the next 5 here.
And
Some
it's
would
worth
say,
pointing out that
yeah.
nobody has revealed their least favorite film yet.
Nobody
it's
is
gonna happen.
No, and Captain Midnight, you still have number 1 coming.
Yes.
Oh, so here we go.
Has everyone else done their number 1?
I think so.
Yeah, everyone else has
okay.
done their number
Wow.
1, yeah. So now this leads us to Deadpool. Where do you have Deadpool?
Okay. Deadpool's my number 6.
Okay.
All right.
I put it slightly above the Wolverine because I do find it more memorable than that movie. I don't love this movie. I don't think I ever will love this franchise. It's, I respect what this movie was able to do on such a tight budget.
Yes.
And I really like the charm of them, like, repurposing footage from The Last Stand of the mansion and stuff. I find that stuff really charming. I find Colossus, I love him in this movie. And I find Ryan Reynolds pretty grating. Like 1 out of every 3 jokes hits, and a lot of the other stuff just really, I'm like, okay. That's the thing with Ryan Reynolds, and this is just my opinion, like humor is super subjective, obviously, is that he's trying so hard, and it's like, buddy, like, calm down.
Can we put Captain Midnight on the payroll?
We have a very small payroll.
I put this movie at number 5 for me, so very similar spot. I think that it is a perfectly fine movie. I actually really like the storytelling of kind of having it bounce back and forth in time. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
It feels to me that a lot of the cast who's in this movie is like really wanting to make it work. And I like that. And not even just the cast. I feel like the direction and so much of this movie, like you said, on a really tight budget, I think it accomplished a lot. And where it couldn't accomplish what it wanted to, it made jokes about how it couldn't do that. And I thought those were perfectly fine. I think there's a lot of really interesting action in this movie as well. And I don't know. I find there's something that definitely separates it from a lot of these. And I think it stands out. And the Deadpool costume is like really good costume.
It is a good looking costume.
It is a really good
in the
costume.
X-Men
That's a good
movies, it's
point.
hard to find a costume that's like, that's a good costume.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Deadpool's like, that's a good costume.
Yeah.
Finally, a costume they're not embarrassed of.
Right?
You know?
I
Like,
know.
Yeah. All right, Daryl, where's the rank? I think I know.
The 12 pick.
It is a cool suit. I'll
Yeah.
give you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I will give you.
No.
I have this at number 12.
Oh, I was right.
Wow.
And I have not seen it.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Now, I've seen the second one.
Okay.
So
Okay,
completely
but-
objective then.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen this, and I'll tell you why. And a lot of it, Captain Midnight, is because of what you said. Ryan Reynolds is grating, and
Sure.
I just didn't want to see it. I don't want to see Ryan Reynolds cut loose. I enjoy him if he's PG-13. I'm like, because then he has to think a little bit more, and he can't just F this, and he can't like Kevin Smith it and just say all these nasty things. But and not that I'm like overly offended by those things, but I just think it's cheap. I don't think it's funny. I'm like, you have to try harder than that to make me laugh.
I
But,
agree with that. There were certainly a lot of jokes in the movie that just felt like, oh, I don't know why that was funny.
Yeah.
Like you just said a swear word.
Yeah.
That's not a joke.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, man, this would have gone over great on the IGN comments board in 2008.
Yeah.
And then some other problems I have. I have a chip on my shoulder about R-rated superhero films. Not that I don't think we should have R-rated superhero films, but I don't think R-rated superhero films should be made just for the sake of making an R-rated superhero film. Like Logan's rated R, and it makes absolute sense. I don't see how you tell that story without making it rated R.
Sure.
And there's other ones that fit that bill, and that's great. If the story calls for it, I'm there. But and I know Deadpool is violent and foul and whatever, that's fine. But this movie seemed to be the one that was pushing that envelope where it's like, hey, we need more R-rated superhero films. And I'm like, no, we don't. We need more good stories. And if they happen to be R-rated, that's fine. You know? And then I also I will admit, I just don't care about Deadpool. He's
Yeah,
never
never
been my
able to.
character. I don't, the breaking the fourth wall, satirizing comics books thing doesn't land with me. I'm like, that's fine, you can do it. It doesn't offend me, but
And
this
I'm
is a
just gonna-
medium that I deeply love and care a lot about. And
And She-Hulk did it better, and she did it first.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you there.
it's like, you can do that. That's fine. It doesn't offend me, but I'm not going to pay attention to you because I care more about this. And so that's why I didn't see that film, and I never will see that film. And I saw the second one for some very specific reasons that we'll talk about when we get there.
I have Deadpool at number 7. I come at the I can kind of see where Daryl's coming from, but I disagree on some of the points. The only thing I don't like about this film is that I feel like it's a really odd film to make, especially.
Wait, sorry. Where did you have it again?
I had it at number 7.
7. Thank you.
Coming at this film in the 20-teens, basically. I don't remember what year it was released. Probably 14 or something like that.
2013.
2016.
Wow, I was
my
way off on that
goodness.
one.
So coming at this film,
That feels 1,000 years ago.
I know, right? It's crazy.
Cow.
Coming at it in 2016, I feel like it is trying to make light of things in a countercultural type of a way. Like, let's all escape to this cathartic violence, but it doesn't know what to do with the cathartic violence, and it also doesn't know how to tell us to feel about it. Because it kind of acknowledges, like, oh, violence is really bad, but isn't it hilarious when some dude just, like, smacks into a freeway overpass sign and then falls down? Like, so it's not to me that it's rated R. It's that it doesn't know what to do with its R rating because it doesn't know what to stand on. It doesn't know if it's like, is violence against females bad, or is violence against females kind of okay because they should be equal to males? We won't come to a conclusion. Let's just have fun, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of, that's what I find really grating when you throw in the Ryan Reynolds humor, but then throw in like subtle, like pseudo, maybe we should think about this, but let's not think about. I mean,
Right,
the Story
yeah.
Geeks podcast is all about digging deeper into stuff, and it's almost like saying, like, what's the point of that? Let's just be funny. And I go, yeah, but you're bringing up stuff that it feels like we should at least have a conversation about.
Yeah, it wants the points for being edgy and subversive enough to like really like bring to mind some of this stuff while not actually wanting to land anywhere on
Exactly.
it. Because it wants the widest possible audience.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's a lot like so many like AAA video games.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Logan uses an R rating to come to conclusions that are, wow, Logan is really depressed. He's going through a time in his life where he's not in a good place. And this world is a very violent, ugly place. And in order to deal with some of the things he has to deal with, he gets very violent and ugly. And I go, yeah, that character would do that in that situation. But Ryan Reynolds does the same things as if it's fun, as if it's like a thing to do because it's just a fun thing to do. And I'm like, that doesn't. So to me, it's not so much about saying, can you put a character into situations that are automatically going to be rated R? Go for it. I'm on board with that. But what I don't want to see is you use the R rating to then be subversive about important conversations that we should be having. So that was Deadpool. Good discussion about that. Now we're going to get into X-Men Apocalypse.
Sorry, I was going to say,
Yeah.
nice little bit of Story Geeks trivia.
Yeah.
Deadpool was the second episode ever released.
Was it?
By this podcast, yeah.
With Tim Posada, right?
With Tim Posada.
Yeah.
And you asked me to do it, and I'm like, oh, I haven't seen it. I don't want to talk about that.
I know.
And then so I
Nothing's
wasn't on until the third one when we talked about Batman Begins.
Story Geeks. It's Jay, and I'm super excited because as of right now, Time Slingers, the time travel novel written by me and illustrated by Nathan Sheck, is out on Amazon. That's right. You can go buy it right now. And you've heard me talking about the Writer's Digest judge, who gave us a really great review that we really appreciated. But probably even more impressive to me are all the reviews that are out on Amazon from real readers just like you right now. You can go read those reviews and see what people are saying. We're really appreciative of them. So if you're wondering, should I buy Time Slingers? Will I enjoy it? Go check out those reviews right now and maybe pick yourself up a copy of Time Slingers, our time travel novel. It's available right now on Amazon.com. The link to Time Slingers will be in the show notes. Special thanks to everyone who has been supporting our re-release. We appreciate each and every one of you. Please keep those reviews coming in. Captain Midnight, X-Men Apocalypse.
Okay, I have X-Men
Number one.
Apocalypse. Yeah.
Finally revealed.
Bullet, number one. I have X-Men Apocalypse at number 12.
Ooh.
Not
Wow.
a shock.
Brutal.
The worst X-Men movie. It is the most dull. It is just like every decision they make, I'm like, why did you do that? Like the Magneto here turning evil again in service of Apocalypse felt so rushed, felt so cheap. And I think what really, really takes it above the top to being like, to where I like memorably disliked this movie, not to bring the whole podcast down, but the scene set in Auschwitz where they have a giant battle.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
That was like my jaw was on the floor in a very bad way.
Yeah.
I was like, are you kidding? Like, you know, they've gone back to Magneto's origins, but
Yeah.
always in a very like respectful way that felt like,
Yeah.
you know, kind of like measured up to like the seriousness of the situation he was in. And this had like Psylocke flipping around using swords
Yeah.
in Auschwitz. Like, are you kidding me? Yeah, and Apocalypse himself is just terrible. Like, he looked like Ivan Ooze.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure he did.
He looked incredibly stupid.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
I just like. I will never watch this movie again unless I have to for a video. But, but yeah, just this was awful to sit through.
So last, number 12 right
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Scott.
I'm not going to fight you on that one. It is also my number 12.
Oh!
It is not a good movie. It is, once again, in my scale of how memorable is it, it is, to me, one of the least memorable movies. You've said more things about it than I remember, Captain Midnight. And the only thing I do remember is, because I made a joke about this in a video of mine recently, that Professor X loses his hair in a ritual performed by Apocalypse.
That's right.
And like, what a silly way. Why would you need a backstory for that? People just lose their hair sometimes. That's a natural thing that happens to people.
Yep.
But nope, we need it to be an ancient mutant ritual performed by Oscar Isaac.
I would rather have watched a movie about Professor X's male pattern baldness.
Yes. Because at least that would have like an internal struggle, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
X-Men,
Like you
the
do-
recession.
but yeah, I can't remember anything about this movie. There was that Wolverine made a cameo again, right? But this was like a more
Yeah, they
comic-
tried to go for like the legit Weapon X
Oh,
thing.
dude, it's
Yeah.
It was
so
just
bad.
awkward.
Oh my god! There's so much of this that felt like it was two different movies,
Yeah.
like bouncing around.
The Wolverine cameo is crazy because they give him that moment where he's like looking at Jean Grey and it's kind of like, oh, they have a connection, and it's like, you can't do that anymore. She's
a
played by a
teenager.
teenage girl and he has only gotten older. Like, are you kidding me?
Oh,
And thank
no
God
thanks.
Logan got made. Otherwise, this would have been Hugh Jackman's final performance as
Oh
Wolverine.
my
Yeah.
god, which would have been horrible. And then I don't know. There's just there's nothing. Oscar Isaac, I feel like, again, is a really great actor, and
Yes.
they're just not given good material, and that makes me angry, and I want to punch somebody. Daryl, you're right next to
Hey,
me.
no.
Oh, okay.
Before you go, I'm just going to pile on because it's also 12 for me.
Yes.
So-
Okay. Fantastic.
So 3 out of 4 of the people, and Daryl didn't even see his number 12. So if he had seen that, maybe
Yeah,
he
it's
would
not
change
12.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. If you want to hear all of my thoughts about how bad it is, you can listen to the podcast that came out 2 weeks ago, where we did X-Men Apocalypse Make It Better. And the overriding thought we all came up with was basically nobody said no. If an idea came up, it seemed to be like, sure, we'll put it in there. Oh, I have an idea. Sure, we'll put it in there. So also 12 for me. Where does it fall for you?
I have it at 9.
Oh,
And
Okay.
I'll defend myself a little bit here.
All right. Okay.
you better, sir.
I don't like Deadpool,
Yeah.
so that immediately puts it up to at least 10.
right.
Sure. And you really don't like Deadpool.
I really don't like Deadpool.
Daryl. Yeah.
And for me, this film is slightly more fun to watch than The Last Stand.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So that's why
Okay.
it gets up to number 9. There's actually one scene in it that I really enjoy, which is the scene where Magneto loses his family. Which it's stupid that he even has a family and that's even
Yes.
occurred. It's like, why did you do that?
Yes.
But that scene in and of itself where he like
Emotion is
loses his
good.
daughter
Yeah.
is like, it's heartbreaking and
It
it destroys
is.
me. And I had kids when I saw it and I'm like,
Yeah.
but it's a well done scene to me. And I don't feel like I can look at The Last Stand and pick out a well done scene. So
Well, my only thing with like why it's flipped for me is because it goes back to the things that were made in the early 2000s. In this case, it helps The Last Stand because I go, you shouldn't be able to release Apocalypse in the modern day with what we have as movies now. You can probably release The Last Stand and make a bunch of money with it because we didn't have the plethora of other material that we have now. So I feel like it's even worse that they get to this place with Apocalypse.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're moving on to Logan, Captain Midnight. What do you think of Logan?
Logan. Okay, I have Logan at my number 1.
Woo!
Number 1.
It's revealed.
Yeah, so Logan, I'm obsessed with the setting of Logan. In Days of Future Past, we're shown a vision of the future that's very, for lack of a better term, comic booky. You know, it's very like, ooh, the dark and stormy clouds above and everything is terrible.
Yeah.
What I like about Logan is its future really reminds me of Children of Men,
Oh, yeah.
of where
like
everything...
a Mad Max kind of.
But not even that, because it's like the world is still functioning, like capitalism is still churning, and the casinos are still up and running. Everyone's still making their money.
Yeah.
But it's just this slow decline.
Yeah.
And
It's recognizable.
it's
Yeah.
and that is so much scarier.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I love that this movie, in a scary way, almost proves Magneto correct. Like, if you think about it, the genocide against mutants basically has happened.
Yeah.
And it happened slowly and not all at once.
Right.
And, we don't know where Magneto is, but that he warned about this.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what's so scary and dark about this movie, more than any of the like overt violence of it, is that it kind of like proves him right in a way, but it still finds reason for hope like within its story. And my only problem with this movie is I think it's like around 3/4 of the way through this movie, it gets a little flabby, like when he's meeting up with the kids' camp and stuff.
Yeah.
But it starts so strong and it ends so strong, and it just the themes in this movie are pretty much the only X-Men movie that I think about a lot. And so just that alone, I have to really put it above the rest of the pack. And on top of that, I mean, the performances are just great.
Oh,
So
Patrick
there's that.
Stewart.
Yeah.
He should have got an Oscar for that.
Yeah.
In my
Yeah.
opinion.
At least a nomination. you
At
know?
least a nomination, please. Yes.
I put Logan at number 2.
Oh.
I love this movie so much. Going back to the point you were talking about how it's rated R for a reason.
Yeah.
The whole theme of the movie is not, we're going to be violent to glorify violence because it's fun. It's violence is taking a toll on Logan. You can see physically all the violence he's doing and how it's impacting him. And he even says to X-23, like, don't be what they made you or to be. And it's like him kind of reflecting on like all this violence I've done over my life. I don't want that for you. Look what it's doing. And it's even like saying that directly to the audience. Like, look at all this violence. It's not good. We're not glorifying it. It's terrible. And I just love that. And I love that there was this hint at this backstory to Professor X, like doing something terrible to the other mutants, but you don't know what.
Yeah.
And I love that because whatever you build it up in your mind to be is going to be worse than anything that they could have said outright in the movie. And there's just so many good themes, and the cinematography is really beautiful. I've not seen the noir version, the black and white version, because they made a cut of that, and I really want to because I bet it would be really fun to watch. But there's just so much of this movie that's an absolute treat and a lot to think about.
Absolutely.
I have that at home and I haven't watched it yet.
Really, get on.
What's wrong
that.
with me?
That's the next.
Then you
movie
must
night.
like it as much as you like Deadpool. You haven't seen that either.
I have this at number 3.
Nice.
And this movie is truly an achievement. This is a fantastic movie. Jay hates this movie. He's known famously for despising this film in every way, shape. I can't believe this wasn't your number 12.
Yeah.
No, don't talk. You can't argue with it.
I won't. The people have made their determination, and I hate it.
He doesn't hate it. All the same stuff that you guys said. I mean, yeah, this one earns its R rating for sure. Like, it's important to the point it's trying to make. Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart both have amazing performances in this. This movie makes me wish. I mean, I wish a lot of things about Apocalypse, but it makes me wish that Caliban was not in Apocalypse at all, because it was stupid. And him in this is great. Stephen Merchant in an X-Men film.
Yeah.
That was so gutsy. And then Laura, the girl that played Laura, I can't remember her name right now, but she did a fantastic job. Daphne Keane. Yes.
Good.
So, I don't know that we're ever going to get to see the New Mutants movie that they supposedly made. But
I want to.
But I wish that there was a New Mutants movie made sort of after this.
Yeah.
You know, with those characters, like with Richter and X-23.
Yeah.
So, while this movie is not a rip-roaring good time in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, my dad hated this movie. He was
Yeah.
like, why'd
Really?
you tell me to see that? That was so depressing.
Yeah.
I saw the last Wolverine movie. It wasn't like this at all.
This was the only X-Men movie I actually cried at. I think the closing scene where they take the cross and turn it into an X was just a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I got really teary-eyed.
Yeah, I have a few little tiny squabbles with it that keep it from getting higher, but great movie. Why do you hate it?
Yeah. Why do I hate it?
Well, you'll notice that Professor X has hair now. That totally goes against X-Men Apocalypse, where he loses all
What's
of
going
his
on
hair.
here? This ruins the timeline of everything. So people are going to be shocked at this. I have it at number 3.
Okay.
I have it at
That's
number 3.
exactly
So
where I
you
thought you'd have
basically hate it, is what I'm hearing.
So basically, I cannot stand it.
Yeah.
No, so actually, Captain Midnight.
Let me explain that really fast, just in case people don't know what's
yeah.
actually happening. So
I don't know what's happening.
yeah, I know. That's the thing. So Jay has been called out online before for accusing. I'm not saying this right.
Yeah.
He loves the 1 to 10 rating, right? Like ever since I've known him
Right.
for over a decade,
I
he
like
loves to rate things on a scale.
And I
of
know
1 to 10.
Scott hates it, but see, I like to quantify things, right? I like to say, I like to be able to tell you, like, this is why I like this one this much more.
Yeah.
And quantify that for people.
Yeah.
But I'm totally okay if you don't like to do that.
Yeah.
That's fine. I just really like to do it.
Sure.
But like we used to work together at a credit union, and he would say then, like we'd be in meetings, and he'd be like, "Okay, scale of 1 to 10, how do you guys feel about this idea?" And like,
Yeah.
I've been living with that for years,
For a long time.
And so there was a certain time he'd call out several movies, and he would say, he was like, "I really like this movie. It's not perfect. I give it an 8 out of a 10."
Yeah.
And people would come by and like, "What? Why do you hate this movie?" And it's like
only
So
an
funny.
8?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so we
What's
make fun
wrong
of
with
it,
this?
but he's sort of been accused of, if you don't love something,
Right,
you hate
then
it,
I hate it,
and there's
yeah.
no middle ground.
Because this is so picking up on something you said, Captain Midnight. As a writer, I view all stories through a writer's lens, and there's virtually no such thing as a perfect story, right?
Sure.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future is awfully close, but there are some things that occur in stories where I go, man, that movie had all the emotional notes, and I don't feel like it earned any of them, or it didn't earn certain ones of them. And you brought it up because you said about 3/4 of the way through, it kind of starts to.
Yeah, there's some pacing issues, and then I think it earns the relationship with him and X-23 really well.
Yeah.
Those other kids feel like a little too many cherries on top to make
Totally.
it's a little emotionally manipulative there.
To me, at that point,
Absolutely.
it feels like they're trying to drag it back into being like the other X-Men films.
Yeah,
But I
And
think
I'm like,
it
no,
ends
you
that
should have
ending
kept it away
Scott
from that.
Mentioned,
Yeah,
I
with
think
the X.
makes up for that in the end. But yeah, there is that little section there that I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And I think I would go so far as to say, for me personally, that's a great moment with them turning the cross into the X, but it isn't earned because of what they did with the other kids. So only because that's a great moment, but it feels like it feels like what they tried to do is they tried to go, oh no, he's a big hero after deconstructing his character for 3/4 of the film, which is amazing filmmaking and amazing, like everything they do with that 3/4 of the way through, I loved. But then they hit that last moment with the kids, and I mean, all you have to do is take out a couple things, like he's gonna die anyways, right? Because he's poisoned. Take that out. Because then when he does die, it's even more meaningful that he chooses to do it, right? Yeah. So there's just a few things in there that I'm like, as a writer, I go, oh, like that, I can't get over that. I can't get past that. Yeah. But I'm not hating on it's my third favorite one. It's just a few things that are just difficult for me to get past.
I want to defend that because, I mean, okay, I know you despise this movie, but I will say I do like the idea that he's being poisoned by adamantium, because I think thematically it ties into this idea that him being a weapon is what is actually like killing him, and it's bad. And
how else is he going to die?
Well, actually, no. So that's awesome. I'm not. What I'm saying is that when you start to poison him in that way, they could have solved this in a different way. But to your point about the other kids, to Captain Midnight's point about the other kids, they are basically saying that he's willing to risk his life for these other kids, and therefore we should see him as a hero.
Yeah.
But it's not that big of a cost for him to do that at that point.
I get you.
Because he's already going to die. So it's not like someone who's saying, like, I could go on and live and, like, do something else, and I could go on and live on my boat, right? Like taking that out of the equation.
Like it's more of a sacrifice.
Exactly.
I get what you're saying.
And if they had done that just a little bit more, so the poisoning is not the worst thing, but because he's putting poison, then the other thing becomes not as impactful. So, again, I don't hate this film. I put it at number 3.
Saying that, but all I keep hearing is hate for this movie.
I know.
I just remember when he kept saying over and over again, you know what movie I like more than Logan? Scary Movie 5.
Like, when we got here, you greeted us by being like, hey, guys, how bad is Logan, right?
Honestly, I think outside of Star Wars, so we've never done... Have we done one proper... We did an episode on Logan.
We did. No, I don't think we've ever done an episode on Logan.
And yet, despite that, outside of maybe Star Wars, this is probably the movie that he's talked about more on the air than any other movie.
It's probably true. Anyways, it comes in number 3. All right, so now we get into, after all my hate for Logan, at number 3, now we get into Deadpool 2.
Now we get into my hate.
yeah. Now we switch back over to Daryl's hate. Deadpool 2, what do you think, Captain Midnight?
I put Deadpool 2 at number 8. So below the first Deadpool, below Wolverine, right above The Last Stand. Deadpool 2 has a competency that that The Last Stand I don't think has. But I find Ryan Reynolds even more grating in this movie. And I think something that I think's like really obnoxious about this movie is how it pats itself on the back for killing off Marina Baccarin's character, like in the first act. Like its whole opening credits are like really self-aggrandizing about like, can you believe we did that? It's like, can I believe an edgy superhero killed off the superhero's love interest? Yeah, I can believe that. That's happened 7 million times. I also really, really don't like. And this is mean. I'm sure he's a great actor. I've heard he's great in the Waititi film that I haven't seen. I do not like that kid in this movie. I think
it's a terrible character.
Terrible. And like when I said this on the channel, on my channel, people were like, "Oh, you don't get it. Like he's supposed to be, cringy or whatever." And it's like that's fine, but there wasn't really a narrative point to him being annoying other than that you were supposed to find it funny. And I didn't. And
the whole movie is centered on the fact that you're supposed to care about that kid being saved.
Right.
And it's like, you don't. He's a punk. Like, let Cable get him.
As for the good stuff in this movie, my buddy Colossus is back. I like him.
Yeah.
Colossus doing his thing. And I like the Cable performance fine. Solid, Brolin is good. I have zero passion for this movie, really. So,
it's very middle of the road. I have it at number 7. And it is, there are some really great moments, I think. I like when they kind of get the whole X-Force together only to kill most of them. I thought that was very funny. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't particularly care for. You mentioned it, Cap, about like killing Deadpool's girlfriends as like a motivating plot factor. Same with even Cable's wife and daughter were killed as a motivating plot factor for him. And it's like the treatment of female characters as plot devices so that to move the story forward for the male characters is like
Could have just called the movie Fridge Pool.
Right, exactly.
And speaking of self-awareness, like the fun Deadpool way to go with that is acknowledging how hack it is to kill her off. But no, they think it's like a really cool thing that they did.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it would, you're exactly right. It would have made much more sense and would have been way better if they took a moment and were like, hey, this is kind of weird and dumb, right?
Like, this is perpetuating something that a lot of people are offended by.
Yeah. I also, I like that they brought Juggernaut back as like in a way that made him almost like
He was fun.
He was fun. I wish the CGI was better, but again, like the budget was so low on these movies that I totally get it. But yeah, I thought it was just it was a fine movie. Nothing to scream about.
That scene where they jump out of the plane, I forget. That's my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
So that's one of the two reasons that I saw the movie is I heard about that scene. So I listened to. We can basically credit Chris Hewitt and the Empire Podcast with making me watch this movie to begin with, because I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see the first one. Didn't want to see the second one. I didn't care. And then I listened to the Empire spoiler special on it. Yes, without seeing the movie, because I knew that would entertain me.
Yeah.
And they talked about the scene where they jump out of the plane and you get the Brad Pitt cameo and all that stuff.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And I'm like, okay, I kind of want to see that. I was intrigued by Brolin as Cable and by having Cable in a movie.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I was so upset about this movie coming out is because I'm like, they are not going to treat Cable the way that I would love to see Cable treated. Like, Cable is a fascinating character. And it bothered me that this is how Cable was going to come into film and as a character in this film. But I at least watched it.
Yeah.
So that put it above the other one.
Oh, so it's at 11?
It's at 11.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Mine is at 8. So I don't have anything new to add to this conversation. Except that the last time I talked about Deadpool, all I did was criticize it. And I need to say that I do believe that the way that they use humor and the way that they use some of their effects is very interesting and intriguing. And I think if done in the right way for the right film, talking about the right things, it would actually be really great. I just don't think that either of the two films get there, which is why they're kind of just sort of okay. All right, we are at our last film, the latest film to come out, Dark Phoenix. Cap, what do you think about Dark Phoenix?
Well, I think what sums up my feelings about Dark Phoenix is that I actually made a mistake when reading my last thing.
Yeah.
I did put Deadpool 2 at number 8, but I said, oh, it was right above The Last Stand. Completely forgetting that Last Stand was number 10. I forgot that Dark Phoenix existed, which is at number 9. Dark Phoenix is a movie that no one will care about in now. Like doesn't like by the time it came out.
Can we use that as the stinger to open this podcast?
Yeah, that's the best. That was awesome.
By the time it came out, it was already an afterthought. Like I was already making videos about like, oh, what would the MCU X-Men be like? Like everyone had moved on.
Yeah.
But is that a reason to hold it against the film? Not necessarily. If the film turned out to be really good. What I did like is I think that this movie had a really interesting take on Professor X, that he is terrible.
Yeah.
And I think that if they had really leaned into that, like his self-aggrandizement, his like oh, he wants attention for being kind of like the good leader of the good mutants and all of the stuff. Everyone hated that scene with Jennifer Lawrence where you know, she's like, oh, I should have called them X-Women. People on the internet freaked out about that.
Yeah.
That whole thing was annoying to me.
That got the A-Force thing in Endgame off the hot seat. It's like no one cared about that anymore.
It was annoying to me that people got upset about that scene because I actually think that's like maybe clunky dialogue aside, whatever. I think that's the most interesting idea in the movie is that Professor X might be kind of corrupted by wanting to see himself as this figurehead.
Yeah.
And I think Hank later on after Mystique's funeral really holds his feet to the fire on that. And then it's completely dropped from the movie, and then Professor X is just completely in the right by the end of it. And because the ending was totally reshot, so whatever thing they originally had in mind for him probably
I think the
got
biggest
tossed out
reason
the
for that
window.
is they had scrolls,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and obviously they couldn't use that anymore.
Yeah, and so, I don't hate this movie. I actually thought the sequence on the train, I liked how it used Magneto's powers. Like, Magneto on a train is a fun idea.
Yeah,
It's really cool. That is actually my favorite action sequence of that movie is there's some really cool choreography with his powers in that fight sequence.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I didn't hate this one. It's just, I don't know. It wasn't terrible like Apocalypse. It wasn't good. Nightcrawler was so boring in it, and that was sad. And that's X-Men, Dark Phoenix. Is it even called X-Men?
No.
Dark
no,
Phoenix?
it's just Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, weird.
If you have dark in the name of your movie, then you don't need the pre-thing. Like, you can just be
man.
the Dark Knight. You don't have to
Or-
be Batman, the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Disney was like, let's not taint the X-Men name anymore.
Yeah.
And just extract it
Just
a little
pull it
bit.
You
right
can't
out.
use it.
Yeah.
Powers now. So I did absolutely hate this movie. I thought it was garbage. It is my number 11.
Oh.
I thought, I guess I'm a little biased because I had just recently made a video about the Dark Phoenix comic and the original storyline, and I really, really loved it.
It's a good
And
video, by the way.
Thank you so much. It's overly long. It's like nearly 40 minutes long. But
I watched the whole thing.
Yeah, me
thank
too.
you.
It was good.
Thank you. But I love the original comic story, and I'm so sad that in 2 movies in, we've not been able to do it justice. And I'm not one of those people who needs it to be exactly like the comics. You can make it, you can just take the same themes, you can change it around as much as you want, but I don't think anything has gotten really the heart of this story, especially in the way that I thought Sophie Turner's acting in a lot of scenes was actually really good. The way that she felt like really conflicted by her powers and like emotionally distraught by everything. I thought that was fantastic. But the whole, I just didn't care. I could not tell you the name of the villain. Like, at least X-Men Apocalypse, I know the villain's name is Apocalypse. But
Yeah.
with
Did the villain have a name?
she did, but it was only spoken like once in a caption because they were doing their alien language. So that made me feel like they changed it in post.
Yeah, they
So,
changed everything about that. I don't think
Yeah.
Jessica Chastain, by the time it came out, knew what
yeah.
character she was playing because they had
Yeah.
shot. Apparently, they had reshot so much that none of the actors actually knew what the ending actually was until they saw the movie.
Yeah.
Which was probably not a fun experience for them.
Right.
No.
Her name was Vuk.
Vuk.
A classic. We all
Oh.
love the
V-U-K.
Yeah.
Vuk.
Classic. Good Vuk. Good on ya.
everyone's X-Men rankings. It's just so cliche. It's always Wolverine, Magneto, Vuk. It's
Yeah, everyone's like, I get it. We love Vuk. Oh, I mean, it's fine. It's fine time we got a movie about
So
Vuk. I mean,
overused.
unbelievable. Yeah, no, I just don't think this movie tackled the themes of Dark Phoenix well. Obviously, the biggest themes of Dark Phoenix would be like, can anyone have that much power and still be good? And the answer of Dark Phoenix is no. And I think ultimately Jean Grey does like use her powers for good and like a sacrificial, like, like I'm going to just do as much good as I can and then go up and kind of like sacrifice myself sort of thing. In the comics though, she realizes that she can't control her powers at all. She can't do that at all. There's always going to be progression from her being good to being evil. And so she kills herself to save people from herself, not to save people from these aliens. And so I don't know. I wish we would have seen a little bit more of those themes in either of these 2 movies, but I think Dark Phoenix is just so boring. There's an action sequence where the entire thing is everyone trying to cross a street. That is what's happening. They're trying to get to the house that Jean is in, and it's just a street. They're on the other side of the street, and it takes like 15 minutes to cross a street. And it's just,
It was the version of that in Toy Story 2. Great.
yeah, here, not so much. Ugh. Yeah.
Daryl.
Okay. I went to see this movie with my friend Scott. Sorry, I have another friend named Scott.
What?
Don't
There's
be
more of
offended.
me?
Yeah, don't be
Yeah.
offended. And I went to see it out of a sense of obligation, I would say.
Sure.
Because I knew we were going to talk about it on the show.
Right.
So I told Scott, I'm like, I have to see this movie. Do you want to go see it with me? He's like, yeah, sure. So we went and saw it. And for about the first 20 minutes of the movie, I'm sitting there going, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah,
but I
same.
don't want to say anything to Scott because I'm afraid I'm going to jinx it and it's going to turn to crap. For me, it never turned to crap.
Really?
I enjoyed it. I have it at number 4.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I'll throw a few caveats out there. Yes, the villain is pointless.
Yeah.
Yes, it's clear that production woes had a huge impact on this story.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up, you can tell that it's a much smaller story than they wanted to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, I actually enjoyed that. I enjoyed that there was no global level battle in
totally
the end of
fine
this
with
film.
that, yeah.
Like I enjoyed the small fight in the field when the only real threat was a giant forest fire or something.
I think for me, because I was saying, somebody was saying to me on Twitter that they wish that this movie had been like this big space adventure like the comics, and I'm like, no, that's I actually like that. I'm with you. I like that it was small scale. My issue is more just I don't think it captured the themes of the comics.
Definitely. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
It failed miserably at that. I think I'm just okay with that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm okay that they gave us something different. I went into it thinking, I'm just going to watch this as a movie, not even as a comic book movie, not even as an X-Men movie, but just as a movie.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I even needed that caveat. Like, I feel like I just really enjoyed it. I think there are a couple of scenes in this movie, I think you were talking about one of them, where McAvoy delivers Oscar-worthy performances.
Yeah. Really?
The scene, and this is the scene I was telling you about, the scene where he is in the room with Beast, and Hank is pleading with him. He's like,
around the
just
kitchen
admit
table.
you were wrong. Like, please, just admit it.
I did like that.
Like,
yeah.
I love that scene. I love it so much. I love the idea that they were sort of trying to switch Charles and Eric in this movie and make Charles the villain and Eric the hero. I think they should have leaned into that a little bit more. Scott, is your hated use of the F word in this movie?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
I love it.
I
love it.
I'm
like,
good.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm like, finally they give Scott some balls. I'm like, finally he gets to do something tough, you know?
I thought that was. I mean, at that point, I was just consigned to what the movie is, and it's like, hey, this has a little life in it again. Okay,
I almost wanted to stand up and clap. I was
Really?
so happy.
Stand up and clap. Wow.
I don't mind him using it. I just wish the line was better, or I don't know, that situation. It felt like so out of nowhere that he was just like, yeah, I don't know.
So I have it at number 4 also.
Oh, wow.
But,
Okay.
But let me say this. This is where expectations come in, right? Logan is at 3, and it is by far a better film. Logan had the best trailer, one of the best trailers of all time. Man of Steel and Logan had phenomenal trailers. Logan is just a great trailer.
Yeah.
The trailer for Logan is almost better than the actual movie.
Yeah. Well, in some regards, yes. And so this movie, I went into it going, it doesn't matter. Like, it's going to be forgotten. My expectations just tanked. But loved Sophie Turner. Loved her performance. Loved the performances. Like I turned to my wife after we had seen it, and I go, dude, Fassbender is one of the only actors I know that would put that level of when he's wrestling with the helicopters, he's one of the only people that I would know that would put that level of angst and effort into doing a CG helicopter scene in a movie like this. Like, it's just ridiculous. So I know it's not a perfect film for sure, but I think it was more about my low expectations and being like, wow, I was really entertained. And by the way, I also think that it makes for a really weird timeline to kill off Mystique, but at the same time, I was getting so tired of that character, and I think Jennifer Lawrence was getting so tired of that character that it just felt like, let's wrap that up. Okay, good. So it's. I think that for me, after the first 3 films I listed, there is almost like a giant chasm before you get to the number 4.
Yeah.
Because First Class, Logan, and Days of Future Past are so good that I feel like there's a separation between all the ones that kind of come into the middle, and then there's the separation to all the ones that are definitely in the bottom. And I can see why people would put this one in the bottom, but there was so much hate on it. I don't know if my ranking will be the same, 10 years from now. I might watch it again and go, oh, yeah, look at all those problems. I did not see those problems the first time through.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I was blind to those problems because I had such low expectations. But we'll see. I put it at number 4 for it.
So 10 years from now, all 4 of us will gather back up together. And
That's
do
right.
This again.
Put it in the calendar.
That's right. Cool. So before we close it out, Daryl, we want to give us the ranking.
Okay, coming in. So the way I did this is just a basic point system. There's 12 films, so if someone put something at number 1, it got 12 points. Number 2, 11 points, so on and so forth.
Gotcha.
And then tabulated it all up. So at number 12, the worst X-Men film, according to the Story Geeks officially, is X-Men Apocalypse.
Sounds right.
Put a stamp on that.
With only 7 points.
Okay.
Number 11 with 13 points is X-Men The Last Stand.
Okay.
Number 10, sort of, with 18 points is Deadpool 2.
Okay.
Number
Man,
9.
the internet would not be happy.
Yeah.
No.
The internet has revolted already. We can hear it.
Number 9, sort of, also with 18 points, is X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay.
Number 8 with 23 points is The Wolverine.
All right.
Number 7 with 24 points is Dark Phoenix.
Okay.
Wow.
Number 6 with 20.
By the way, caveat, I've never read the comics, and I'm positive
Fair
they're
enough.
better.
You should.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
You should.
Yeah.
Number 6 with 29 points is X-Men, the original film.
Okay.
Number 5 with 31
Top
points.
5 now. Here we
Yeah,
go.
top 5.
Top 5.
So number 5 with 31 points, X2, X-Men United.
All right.
All right. Gotcha.
X-Men Days of Future Past 3.
Okay.
Number 2 with 43 points is Logan.
Nice.
And number
right.
1 with 44 points is X-Men First Class.
I can get behind that.
No, I think my list is right.
Objectively speaking, Scott's list is right, but I can get behind this one.
Yeah.
So why don't you guys? That was super fun. So thank you for joining us. That was awesome. Why don't you guys give shout outs to your channels one last time before we close this out?
Okay, cool. So you can find me at just Captain Midnight. I post a video every Thursday.
Nice.
And you can find me on Twitter at MidnightCap.
Nice.
Fantastic. So you can find my YouTube channel. It's just called NerdSync, NerdSync. You can also follow me on Twitter for just at NerdSync as well. It's a good time. Or I have a personal Twitter that has spicier takes, which is just my name at Scott Niswander.
Perfect. Definitely go follow these guys. As you can hear from this podcast, super knowledgeable about comics and movies. And if you like the Story Geeks content, you will love their content for sure. Definitely an endorsement from me. Well, that's it for today's show. Special thanks again to Scott Niswander from NerdSync and Captain Midnight for joining us. This was episode number 4 in our X-Men series. Check out last week's episode on Days of Future Past. And coming up next week, Dark Phoenix. Subscribe on your preferred podcast provider to make sure you don't miss any upcoming shows. If you enjoy the Story Geeks podcast, please share our show with a geek friend or review the Story Geeks podcast on Apple Podcasts. On today's Aftercast, don't forget you can listen to our entire unedited 2-hour extravaganza ranking every single X-Men movie. Yeah, you didn't hear all of the content. You heard most of the content, but not all of the content. If you want to hear that, go check it out. For more information on our Aftercast and all of our other premium content, head over to thestorygeeks.com. Thanks for listening in, and as always, question everything in your favorite geek stories and always seek the truth. Special thanks again to these amazing people who, by the way, do have access to that entire 2-hour unedited podcast from today. They help us produce the Story Geeks podcast by supporting us on Patreon. Anthony Holder, Adam Vargas, Bob Sherfield, Brianna, Bryce Cox, Connie Moe, Jessica Pritchett, Jim and Mary Baldwin, Joshua Beckham, Jeremy and Kimberly Lugeau, Julian Armstrong, Monty Thigpen, brand new supporter Nathan Miller, Nick Prokop, Ray DeLeon, brand new supporter Rondell Dobard, Samuel Peloquin, and Wade Johnson. To gain access to our Aftercast and unlock more Patreon rewards, or just to support the show, please head over to thestorygeeks.com for more information.